Hey there, this is QXC. In this game I'm going to be talking about how to use drops and multiple attacks to deny your opponent's ability to mine, and then the various follow-ups which you can do after that point. Most specifically in this game, I'm going to show how you can use a timing attack to exploit the fact that your opponent hasn't been mining for some amount of time in the recent past. So the map is Delta Quadrant. I am root QXC, spawning as the purple Terran in the top right-hand corner, versus Skillet, the green Terran, in the bottom left-hand corner. Delta Quadrant, 4-player map. Natural expansion inside the main, covered by destructible rocks. Natural expansion directly outside the main. 4 gold expansions, all covered by rocks. And a Xel'Naga watchtower in the center of the map. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit through the beginning of the game. Very standard build orders in general. 12 gas, 12 racks, 13 gas. Constantly producing SCVs, as good players should, unless they're doing something crazy. Building the Marine, both players scouting, checking out. SCVs leaving the base once the Marine is out. And so this game, I actually opt for early Reaper play. And then I take my early second gas. It ends up not really delaying your tech very much, if at all, because you get the second gas a little bit earlier than your opponent. And so once I get this early Reaper out, and I've started my factory, I'm going to use the early Reaper and an SCV and a Marine to control the Xel'Naga watchtower as best I can. This is just kind of a general early game thing. You want to deny your opponent vision, make it harder for them to do things. So you can see here, I actually use the SCV to deny him entrance into the watchtower and kind of confuse his units. 1 Marine and an SCV end up killing 2 Marines. That's not something you see every day. So here I'm going to start a reactor. In a moment I'm going to swap my factory over and start a siege tank or something. I'm going to build something on that. And kind of aiming for Marine tank at this point. I'm just kind of poking around with my Reaper, going to see what's going on here. If I had been a little bit faster, I might have been able to take advantage of the fact that he only had 1 Marine. And you can see here my Reaper takes 2 shots from the Hellions. It's a little more than I would like. Here I start the starport. I'm going to take a second barracks. Going for a slightly more aggressive opening than usual. Most openings only get 1 of each production building. And the reason for this, I'm not actually sure. Oh, I know why. I know why I did this. It's because I had to go do something, and so I was trying to do a more aggressive build than I usually do in order to end the game a little bit quicker. Even though this is generally a little bit riskier and harder to make work. And the reason for that is if your opponent ends up defending this kind of 2 barracks, 1 factory, 1 starport play and expands at some point, you end up a little bit behind. It's also kind of difficult to produce off this many production buildings. You can see my money is constantly very, very low. I'm having a hard time keeping up on my gas and supply and all that. So I'm going to move out with this force of siege tanks and Marines and medevac, just kind of apply pressure to his main, see what's going on, while rallying the rest of my units to my main in case of any kind of counter or drop in the back. So he does see my forces come. You can see the Vikings are falling back. Units at the top of the ramp just being ready to defend, and I'm going to use the medevac here to kind of scout for my siege tanks, and then lift some of my units over, just kind of trying to do whatever damage I can. Going to build a Banshee here, keep producing units, trying to keep up on supply, airlifting all my units over. And here I'm just going to push up into his back, because I know he saw my army at the front, so he's expecting me to be there. And so this is, I can definitely do some amount of damage here before he can respond adequately. At this point I realize the medevac is dead. The siege tank is a little out of position. Drop certainly does not go as well as I would like, but in terms of overall effectiveness, it's not so bad. You can notice the total SCV deficiency here. I'm way ahead on workers right now. The main thing I need to be cautious of is any kind of counterattack would be particularly devastating because I lost so many units. And this is really common. When you trade military for SCVs, you're losing a short-term advantage for a more long-term one. You're losing the ability to attack and influence the map temporarily, but in the long run you're going to end up with more resources because you have more SCVs. And so at this point I'm trying to get siege mode out in time to defend this, building a whole bunch more barracks, just trying to get units in general so that I can deal with this counterattack. And fortunately for me, he only has 2 siege tanks, making it fairly difficult for him to actually push up. I'm not sure why I built so many Marines. I definitely should have started building Marauders earlier. But I almost have Stim, and siege mode is done, and this is really the key moment. Whenever you're on the defensive like this, you want to be aiming for the thing that's going to allow you to hold as soon as possible. For me, it was siege mode. And that, in conjunction with Stim, allowed me to fend off that attack. And so I was just kind of delaying, trying not to take as significant damage for as long as possible until siege mode finished and I could deal with the attack. So at this point, I am definitely ahead. He didn't really convert his superior army into much of an advantage, and he is pretty far behind on workers. His expansion is also a little bit behind mine, but he's starting to add production buildings and get that going. So a little bit of mismicro there. Definitely did not expect him to be so aggressive after he lost that battle pretty decisively. But this is one of those situations where you take what your opponent gives you. I know I just wiped out most of his army, so I know he's not going to have that much in his main if he's got stuff in the watchtower. So I'm taking 2 medevacs, which I just double produced off my reactor, and I'm going to do 2 drops. And this is really the key. This is pretty lucky for me. This is the key concept that I want to convey in this video. Is if I were to all-in attack him, it wouldn't work. I just do not have the units, I don't have enough tanks, I don't have air superiority. I wouldn't be able to break this middle, and if I were to go around, he's got pretty good vision, he probably would have seen it, backed up, sieged, and held his natural. And well, that's a good position for me. I want to go for something better. So you can see on my vision, 1 medevac, 2 medevac. So here I'm dropping, my main goal is not to disrupt production, but it's to disrupt mining. I just want to keep him from mining resources for as long as possible. And so I bring my SCV, or my drop up above the mineral line here, just trying to make it as difficult for him to start mining again as possible. And then I'm also going to start picking off supply depots. Pretty soon So that whole time there's a good probably 20, maybe 30 seconds where he wasn't mining. And so what's really key here is the amount of resources he didn't have during that time means he's going to have fewer units that he was able to produce. Meanwhile, I'm producing full-blown. I'm not hitting any supply stops. I'm not getting my economy disrupted. And with the drop, not only did I disrupt his mining, but I also killed some of his supply depots. And so you can see, instead of him being able to produce another round of units, and having something like 70 supply here, which, I mean, it's still a big deficiency, but that's to be expected considering how far ahead I came out of the opening. Instead of having around 70 supply, he's stuck at 50 and he can't attack. Or he can't build any more units because he's so supply stuck. And that's really critical. So I use those drops to pull his army back into his main so that I can take the watchtower And I'm also going to be taking advantage of the fact that he wasn't able to produce for so long. And so I'm just going to rally to this area here, or rather I'm not. I'm going to rally some units back home, but I'm going to take a large portion of my army, and I'm just going to smash his front, because that whole time, this is a good minute, 2 minutes, where he hasn't produced anything, and I've been constantly producing. And so I know his army is going to be slightly smaller than it would have been. He didn't get resources while I denied him mining. He had to rebuild some of his supply depots. And so this is one of those situations where you want to sense that your opponent is weak. They're going to have slightly fewer units than they would want. They're not going to have the upgrades they might want. Something's got to give. And so I take a look at his base, scanning, and I just realize, you know what? I'm strong enough. I'll just walk all over his face and end the game. And it came out of the drop at the very beginning of the game in the corner here. Then it came out of the successful defense, putting me significantly ahead. But then the real clincher, the reason I was able to make this attack happen the way I wanted it to, was the double drop in both mineral lines, and then the like 2 or 3 supply depots that I killed. That denied him a good deal of resources, put him in the red in terms of supply, and made it so that he missed almost 2, maybe 3 production cycles. At which point my army was just so much bigger than his that I could walk right through his front door and take him out. So being able to recognize what things you can do to make your opponent weak, to reduce their army size, and then how to take advantage of that will help make you into a better player. This is QXC, over and out.